ABC News, World News Sunday. Substituting for Forrest Sawyer, here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening. American hostage Edward Tracy is at the American Air Force Hospital in Wiesbaden, Germany tonight, where his first requests were for a hamburger, a cola, and a good night's sleep. Tracy became a free man early this morning when his Muslim kidnappers made good on a promise they made only yesterday to release one of their American hostages within 72 hours. There were a number of developments in the hostage story today, developments that are fueling speculation that the hostage crisis may finally be coming to an end. We begin with Jerry King in Damascus, Syria.
Until this morning's communique from the kidnappers came with Tracy's photograph, few people had thought he would be the one released. They were as wrong as Tracy himself had been nearly 5 years ago. As a convert to Islam and a longtime Beirut resident, he believed he'd be immune to being taken hostage. Today, Tracy seemed somewhat taken aback by it all. He appeared to snap at photographers snapping him, apparently feeling the hostages had been forgotten.
Now take it easy. You're going to spoil me. I haven't been on Time magazine for a year.
Tracy had earlier given Syrian TV his first impression of freedom.
I'm really happy to see a tree and hear an airplane and hear an automobile.
But he revealed little about life as a hostage.
We played cards every day. We had tea every morning. No newspaper or radio or television since quite a while.
The other Westerner released today thanked his captors for treating him well, even though French aid worker Jérôme Leroux, kidnapped Thursday, was found bound and gagged beside a Beirut street this morning. With Tracy's release, the hostage tally is now down to 10, 5 of them Americans. For Elham Sisipio, this was yet another day on the hostage roller coaster. Almost everyone believed it would be her husband Joseph who was let out. It was not. But for all the families of the remaining hostages, there is some consolation. Momentum towards ending the hostage crisis continues to grow. Jerry King, ABC News, Damascus.
That momentum picked up considerable weight at a British Air Force base outside London today, where UN Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar met with the hostage, whose release last week launched the current wave of optimism. An optimism so much in evidence in Wiesbaden, Germany tonight. More from ABC's Jim Laurie.
Greeted by U.S. Ambassador Vernon Walters, Edward Tracy was escorted to a round of medical tests at the U.S. military hospital at Wiesbaden. His release just 4 days after John McCarthy's, again raising hopes of freedom for all hostages. At the Lynham Royal Air Force Base in England, the UN Secretary General emerged as the man who might broker a deal. Pérez de Cuellar was handed the letter John McCarthy had promised to deliver from his Islamic Jihad kidnappers. De Cuellar later revealed the 6-page message in Arabic did not contain specifics of a hostage swap, but did urge him to renew efforts in the Middle East.
I feel fully committed to do my best until the end in order to totally solve this humanitarian problem.
John McCarthy, still undergoing medical tests here, offered this advice for his friends left behind.
It will come to an end, so keep the faith. It won't be too long, I'm sure.
But British officials who spent the day with de Cuellar and McCarthy pressed for something more from Israel to break the logjam over hostages.
I think it would be extremely helpful if the Israelis did feel able to release some of the detainees, prisoners that they hold in South Lebanon.
Secretary General de Cuellar, meanwhile, moved on tonight to Geneva, where UN officials said he would study further the letter from Islamic Jihad and be ready to go anywhere, anytime to help end the hostage conflict. Jim Laurie, ABC News, London.
For one American family, there was finally joy today. 5 other families who also have relatives being held hostage in Lebanon saw their hopes raised and then dashed again. As Kathleen Delaski reports, the brother of one hostage says this ordeal is getting harder and harder to endure.
Before he went to bed last night, Thomas Sisipio chalked up another day on the calendar that tells how long his brother has suffered.
I hope this is the last time.
I have to change the numbers for my brother Joseph.
But this morning, Sicipio had to nail the freedom sign he'd painted over someone else's name.
It's a disappointment for us, of course, but I am still very happy with the fact that an American hostage was released.
At least he said he'd be able to talk to Edward Tracy, who was held with Joseph Sicipio for almost 5 years. When Tracy was freed this morning on live television, it was the first time his mother had seen him in 26 years, since he lived abroad before he was captured.
He looked as though he'd lost weight and older.
Doris Tracy said she would celebrate in her own quiet way, with a nice cup of tea and toast. But even if other hostages are released soon, the sister of Terry Anderson is still unsatisfied. On This Week with David Brinkley, she said the Reagan administration did not work hard enough to free the hostages.
I've heard people from the Reagan administration say that it was their quiet diplomacy that brought us to this point. And my answer to them is quiet diplomacy cost my brother 6.5 years of his life.
Now there are 5 Americans still in captivity. There are no public messages that another release is imminent, just a general sense among governments and loved ones that the end of the ordeal is near. Kathleen Dulaski, ABC News, the State Department.
Coming up, what Israel hopes to gain from a deal to release Western hostages in Beirut. And later in this broadcast, Italy's battle to force thousands of Albanian refugees to return home. And the puzzling execution-style slangs at a Buddhist temple near Phoenix.